Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we have a very good problem for you guys called group shifted strings, right? So this is a very good problem, so make sure to pay close attention to the problem statement, right? So it says, perform the following shift operations on the string, right? So right shift, replace every letter with a successive letter of the English alphabet, right? Where Z is replaced by A, for example, ABC can be right shifted to BCD, right? Or XYZ can be right shifted to YZA, right? So we can see that, from ABC, if we can go to BCD, right? We just right shift, we leave A behind, right? And then we go to BCD, right? Keep it at the same character length, string length, right? Okay, we have like, yeah, so from ABC, we leave A behind, and we just get D, right? And from XYZ as well, right? We leave X behind and becomes YZA, right? So it's just kind of what we're seeing here, okay? Make it bigger, you guys can see. All right, so let the left shift, right? Replace every letter with the preceding letter of the English alphabet, right? So one important case, right? You can see that, YZA, right? The next character after Z is A, right? You see it wraps around, right? So it's like circular pretty much, right? You kind of think about it like that way, right? So the left shift, right? Replace every letter with the preceding letter of the English alphabet, right? Where A is replaced by Z. For example, BCD can be left shifted to ABC, right? We see BCD, we leave D behind, we go to the left, right? It becomes ABC, right? Or YZA can be right shifted to left shifted to XYZ, right? So hopefully it kind of makes sense, right? So we can keep shifting the string in both directions, right? From an endless to form an endless shifting sequence, right? So for example, right, we can shift ABC to form the sequence BCD, right? So we have ABC, right? And then we go ahead and we go to BCD, guys, right? That's the next sequence, right? And then we can keep doing that until we even get to XYZ, right? And then we go to YZA, and then it wraps around again and goes back to ABC, right? So we can keep doing it, as you guys can see, right? So those are all the shifting sequences right here, right? So ZAB, AB to ABC, right back, right? So we're given an array of strings, right? Group all together strings that belong to the same shifting sequence, right? You may return the answer in any order, okay? So it's a very, very good problem, guys, right? It's a bunch of stuff that, is just there to confuse you a little bit. I don't know if it'll help you or not, but yeah. So the task right here, right, is to group pretty much strings that have the same shifting sequence, right? So let's go through a couple examples and we'll kind of clarify more with the ASCII, right? So the example we have here, we have a bunch of strings, right? And then we can see that they're all grouped by, different lists, right? So strings that belong to the same shifting sequence, right? They are part of the same list, right? As you guys can see. So ACF, A is by itself, right? AZ, A and Z by itself or together, right? ABC and then those three strings, right? So a pretty pattern, like easy pattern that we see so far, right, is that uh we could maybe just keep it simple, right? So for each string, right, if they are the same length, we just group them together and they will return, right? That should take care of things, right? But no, it can't be that quick, guys, right? So because, right, that's not what this is. I know it looks that way here, right, Mike? But that's not what this means, right? For example, right, say for example we had like AC, we have AB, right? So we had like AB, right? AB, and we also had uh AC, guys, right? So those two would not be part of the same, right? And I'm gonna explain to you guys why, because they don't have the same shifting sequence, right? For example, this one, right? We went, we shifted, I have AB, right, which is, a difference of one, right? The pattern is different, right? And then we have AC, the difference between the two characters is of two, right? It's different, okay? Right? So it's not the character length, the length of the string is not necessarily means that they're part of the same group, right? It needs to share the same shifting sequence, right? And they've explained like the shifting sequence here, right? What they mean by that, right? So you can go to the right, which means it's right shifted. You go to the left, means left shifted, right? Okay, so you can see that, yeah, so it's kind of what this is. So two strings, right, are part of the same shifting sequence, or if they have the same pattern, like, when it comes to the way that the characters are, shifted, right? For example, AB, right, is the same as will be the same as XY, guys, right? Because, right, we just go ahead and move forward one from X, right? We move forward one, right? Just like from A, we just move forward one to get to B, right? You know, it's right shifted, pretty much as simple as that, right? So the pattern, right, that we can see is the same thing, right? Just like if we had like C, right? To what would be the next thing to make it like in the same pattern will be D, right? Because we saw the pattern is just adding one to the previous character, right? Pretty much as simple as that, right? You know, right? So it's with that same thought process that we're gonna come up with that logic that um, if two strings, so all those strings will be part of the same sequence, right? The same group, pretty much of things, right? So, right? So you guys don't believe me yet, right? So let's quickly do the examples here, right? You know, so we'll do a couple, right? And then we'll go into the code, right? So what we have here, we have ABC and BCD, right? You know, so ABC, right? So from A to B is on difference of one, and B to C, right, is on difference of one as well, right? Just by going to the right. So now it would be of 1, 1, right? Pretty much this represents, right, the pattern that we're seeing, right? So from the first character to the second one, right, is a difference of one, right? And then from there to this one, right, is a difference of one as well, right? So pretty much it's right shifted one, right? Okay, and then that's how we can do BCD, right? It maps to the same kind of pattern, right? 1, 1, right? Because we go forward one, right? And then we go forward one from C to D, we go forward one again, right? So we see that they have the same thing. That's how we can go ahead and group them together, right? Because they have the same pattern. So we can see that the core of the algorithm that we're going to have, right, is to kind of find a way to find the pattern for each of the strings, right? So pretty much what we're gonna do to find that is to do some sort of hashing thing, right? So we're gonna encode, right? You know, we're gonna calculate the hash for each string, right? Pretty much finding the pattern that it has, right? Okay. And then once we find that pattern, we can store that pattern as a string, guys, right? And then we're gonna store some sort of a map, right? The map is gonna allow us to easily group them, right? So the key would be the whatever pattern it produces, right? You know, after we go ahead and calculate the pattern, right, for that particular string, right? Right. So once we get that, right? So the key, right? So the key value, right? So the key, right? So for this example, right, we would map it as a string, right? It will be 1, 1, right? And then, right, it will map to a list of strings, guys, right? And then the string would be ABC and then BCD, right? You know, so this is one example, right? And pretty much we'll calculate that for every one of the strings, guys, right? So let's do a quick one, which involves, for example, AZ, right? For example, this one, right, is a little bit tricky. That it might not be straightforward, right? So AZ, right? And that'd be A, guys, right? So AZ means that we went back, right? You know, we're back one, right? You know, because remember it wraps around, right? You know, we went back to the left, right? One, right? And then from BA, right, we went back one as well, right? You know, so you might be tempted to say, right, so difference now is 25, right? Okay. And just like this one as well would be, so the difference, so we had to add 25, yeah, and then we from B to A, right, we had to add 25 as well, right? You know, pretty much it also maps to 25, right? Because, you know, yeah. So how we calculate the hash, right, is by going through the strings, right? So we compare, right? If we have a so it needs to be at least a length of 2, right, to do the algorithm that I'm talking about, right? So once we confirm that, right, we go ahead and calculate like whatever thing that I am, right? We subtract it with the previous character, right? So pretty much it gives us the difference, right? The how many it was shifted to get to that character, right? So from this one would be 25 minus 0, right? To get 25, right? So this is what we have here, guys, right? Okay. Just that's how I ended up having 25, right? So that's how the algorithm is gonna work. We subtract with the previous character, right? You know. So this one is going to be so this is 1, minus, no, I meant to do 0, right? Because that's what this is, right? 0 minus 1, right? To give us the -1, right? So since we have -1, right, we go ahead and do a modulo, right, to get the 25 that I'm looking for, right? This is exactly what we want, right? All right. This is exactly what we want here. So if you guys don't believe me yet, I'll quickly use the calculator real quick to show you guys that I'm not lying, right? So it gives us 25, right? So we see that we're in good shape. So we have the 25, you guys, right? So this is how we can map, right? Two things like that to the same, values, right? So 25, 25 will map to, what do you guys understand it now, right? So the 25, we would have, what's it called? AZ and BA, guys, right? Just like that, right? And then the other one, they share the same pattern, the same kind of thought process, right? So hopefully it made sense to you guys. If it didn't, let me know in the comment section. All right. I can go in detail more details next time, right? Okay. So yeah, let's quickly go ahead. I think the code would make it like we'll bring it home with the logic, right? So what we're gonna do, guys, we're gonna have a map, right? I told you guys we're gonna group them into this particular map, right? And then we're gonna group them to a list of string, right? So the key would be the encoding pattern, right? That particular string is following, right? Okay. I went through a couple examples, right? From, let me see, I did, right? When I explained, for example, we can have AC, right? AC and XZ, XZ are part the same, right? Because it's a difference of 2, right? Between the characters, right? And but BA necessarily doesn't mean AB is not can't be part of the same shifting sequence because it's only shifted once by 1, right? To the right. It's not it's it's not part of the same, right? Because it's not part of the same pattern that they're following, right? So it needs to be the same pattern pretty much, right? Okay. So yeah, so we can call it group, guys, right? Groups to keep it simple. Then what's going to be next for us is to essentially pretty much go through every string, guys, right? str and strings. Okay, so now what we're going to do is to simply get the key, guys, right? So we're going to implement that function, right? So str, we're going to pass it in. We're going to get like the pattern, right? But that string, right? Okay, so once we have that pattern, we're going to check, right? And we're going to go ahead and implement that function a little bit, right? So we're going to check our map, right? Groups that contains key. So if it contains it doesn't contain the key yet, right? Then we go ahead and allocate memory for it real quick. So put a key on your array list. Okay, so now that looks good. We allocate memory. What we're gonna do is to simply add put, right? No, I meant to do get that key, right? Get that list and then go ahead and add that string to it, right? All right, so this is how we end up grouping all of the different strings together, right? And after we group all the strings together, right, we gonna pretty much so since the output result, right, needs to be in this format, right? So that's kind of what we need to do this other check here, guys, right? Okay, so we're gonna create the output result. What we're gonna do is simply do a loop through, it'll be that list of string, guys, right? Group, right? For that particular group in groups, go ahead and add it to our output result, right? All right, then we add it and then we simply return the result. And you're pretty much almost done here, guys, right? So the next thing for us to do is to simply really quickly go and implement the most important function, right, of this, right? So we say that we're going to return a string, we're going to call it hash, and then we're going to take in this string, guys, right? Yes. So we're going to do if, right? s that length is equal to 1, right? Then we're going to treat those cases differently, right? So we're going to pretty much write a single, right? So it's a single character. So all the single characters are going to be mapped to the same thing, right? Pretty simple, right? So now we're going to go ahead and build, like, the pattern that we're seeing for that particular string, guys, right? And we're going to be doing this for every string, right? Because we need to figure out the pattern so we can know that which groups it belongs to, right? So we're going to loop through the array, right? Simple linear loop. We're going to start I less than that's that length, I plus plus, right? Okay. So what's next for us to do now is to go ahead and calculate the pattern, right, that we're seeing. So we're going to told you guys, right? We're going to just compare, right, for that character, right? So we can't start at 0. We got to start at 1 because we're going to subtract from the previous character, right? The character that came before us to see um the difference, right, between them, right? So this is kind of how we kind of determine the pattern, right? So if it's like 1 or 2, right? So we can, like, compare different, like, so like, yeah. So we can, like, see the pattern. We can easily find the pattern of how the characters are being shifted by, right? For example, right, we could have cases like for example, right, I could quickly do it. So we have like A C B, right, would be the same as X Z Y, right? No, that we went forward 2, right, and then we went back 1, right? Which is the same case we have here, guys, right? If we have time, we'll, I'll show you guys, with a test case, you can see that they would map to the same one, right? So they don't necessarily need to move by 1, right? They could move by different stuff, right? So you see it goes by forward 2 and back 1, right? Yeah. So we calculate the difference, right? So this is why we do this calculation that way, right? So we calculate the difference, right? Between those adjacent characters, right? Right? And then we're gonna do a simple check, guys, right? If offset is less than 0, if it's less than 0, then we go ahead and append offset plus 26, guys, right? And this is pretty much talking about the modulo that I was talking about, right? To keep it within that 0 to 25 range, right? So, and else, right? If it's only that, then we forgot to add. Okay. If that's not the case, right? If it's no greater than 0, right? It's a positive one. Then we go ahead and just append it straight up, right? As simple as that. And then after that, we simply return, guys, right? Our, pattern that we've seen for this particular string, right? As be that to string. Yeah, simple as that, guys, right? So quick recap, right? We just, we go through every string. For every string, we calculate the pattern that the string has, right? And the way that we calculate it is by, going through the string, right? Starting from the second character and calculating the difference between them, right? That so that we can get the shifted amount, right? And so that we can keep building the pattern, right? And then we return the pattern that we see, right? That hash, right? For that particular string, and then we go ahead and add them to a list. We add them to the map, right? And then so that we can group all the string, right? That produces the same pattern, right? The same key, right? That's kind of what this whole thing's about, right? So once we do that, we simply return, right? So let's press submit, guys, right? Let's run the code, see if we've had small test cases. Oh yeah, well, sorry, I meant to do groups that values. Totally forgot. Let's press run, see if we've had small test case. So let's quickly talk about this one, right? That I was telling you about, you guys, earlier, right? So let's edit that test case real quick. So let's do AZ. And then we do XYZ, right? So they would be part of the same one, right? So let's press run it. As you guys can see, as I said, right? ACB, right? XYZ, right? Is part of the same thing, right? So let's press submit. It looks like our code looks correct, right? All right, perfect. We passed all these test cases, guys. If you guys found value, if you guys understood the thought process in the comment section. If you guys are new, be sure to subscribe because we'll be doing a lot of other videos just like this one. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.